Here we're replacing the brake pads and rotors on a Honda Ridgeline. The same applies to a Honda Pilot as well. So we're gonna get started. First you wanna raise the vehicle. You can put the jack on the frame and then also use jack stands. We have the jack stands behind there as well. Slide the wheel under the car just in case, but whatever you do, make sure that you have something else besides the jack. Okay, so once you take the brake loose the lug nuts and then raise the vehicle, and then you can go ahead and take off the lug nuts and then the wheel. Before you do anything, just start by spraying a little bit of penetrating oil on these holes here, around here, and then where these set screws are, because that will make it easier for you to remove the set screws and the rotor later. The next thing that I like to do is I'm going to push this brake caliper out. It pushes the pistons in. You can use a brake pad spreader tool, but we're just going to use a screwdriver instead to do this step. This works just as well. So I'm pushing this and I'm putting the screwdriver against the rotor and just pushing this out. Sometimes these here can get rusted, and then when you try to do this, it's just really hard. So in that case, if these pins here don't slide, you might have to take this off, check them, grease them, and if they really don't move after that, then you have to replace the brake caliper. And we have another video on how to do that. Alright, so here I'm putting pressure. I'm just keeping pressure on. It's moving very slow, so it's kind of hard to see it. You can see here that's moving. You can see here we have a gap now, which is good, but you want to make sure you push this out all the way, otherwise your new pads are not going to fit. You can skip this step and use a caliper spreader tool later if you want, but this is another way to do it. I think that's as far as that will go. So next we're gonna take these bolts here for the brake caliper. These are 17 millimeter. So once you take these bolts out, you want to hang the brake caliper over here by the strut. You don't want to hang it down by that hose. One thing you need to be careful is this dust shield here. Make sure it doesn't get bented. After you put everything together, just check that. Make sure it doesn't touch the rotor. Otherwise you're going to hear grinding noise. So next we have these clips here. I'll take these out. Okay, these clips, these help the pads spread them out. So you put pressure, they close. You release the brake pedal, and those two clips help the pads so they're not rubbing against the rotor. Okay. Now here on the back we have these two bolts. The caliper bracket, they need to come off. You'll need a breaker bar on these because they're all quite tight. Remove the bracket. Now the next step is we have these set screws here. They need to come off. Now that's why it's important to spray some penetrating oil before you start here, because what will happen is that they're pretty hard to get off. So what I do is I push on the screwdriver and keep pressure pushing, and then turn with the other hand. I'm gonna use my right hand. And that one didn't come off. You have to be careful because you can see these are pretty easy to strip, these bolts. Now if you do strip one of them, you can drill it out and just use just one. These are just kind of to align the rotor. They don't really do anything else, and most cars will usually have just one, so it's nothing to be worried about if you're only putting one back. See that one got the threads that's just getting ruined. That's not going to come off, so we are going to drill that off. So I'm going to drill that out. Now what you need to do is just make sure that the head of that screw is drilled. You don't have to remove the whole screw. Alright, so that should be enough. That's not holding up anything anymore, so we're gonna go ahead and tap this rotor on the back here, get that off. As you saw there, that required quite a bit of hitting. That's why spraying that penetrating oil helps a little bit. You can see this here. If you want, you can drill that completely out, but then you'll have to tap new threads if you want to put 2 screws. We're just gonna go with 1, and that should not be a problem. So if you have any rust on this back here, you want to make sure you clean that off. And then the next thing is gonna line up these and also the set screws. So basically what the set screw does is it holds the rotor, so the rotor doesn't, it's not loose like this, but when you take off your wheel. But once you put the wheel on, it's gonna be the lug nuts that line everything up. So just one should be okay. And you'll see a lot of cars only have one screw. There's a few cars that don't even have a set screw at all. Okay. So once you pull these out, use a wire brush to just kind of clean those a little bit. Otherwise, when you slide the new pads in, they're just not gonna go in very easily. They're just really hard to go in. So right here we have put the bracket back on the vehicle. You want to torque these 2 bolts, that's very important. Then also you put the pads on, put new shims here, and then grease the area here where the pad is going to slide. No grease on that side, just here, as you can see on the other side. Okay, so the wear indicator is this clip right here that goes on the inside. Push them in. You also want to put grease on these pins here. They slide out, and then you want to grease those, because otherwise they can seize and then you have issues with pads and rotor not wearing evenly. Once you do that, then you're ready to put the brake caliper on. Now you can see these pistons are pushed in. We used the screwdriver earlier to push this out, so let's see if that fits. If not, we might have to use a brake pad spreader. So in order to push the piston in, you can use this tool, and then you thread that, and it pushes that in. but you might not have that tool. So if you don't have it, you can take one pad out, put this in here, put screwdriver, and push against the rotor and just keep pressure. So what that's doing is pushing those two pistons back in. You can see they're pushing more now. We should be good to install it. If your pads have these clips, go ahead and install these. These are just to help push the pads out after you release the brake pad. One last thing, if you got NTCs, put it here and right here on this area right here. And you want to put these bolts, you always want to start threading these by hand. Look at these, line these up here properly, right there. And then these, you also want to torque these to spec. These are hand tight basically. You don't want to over torque these or over tighten them because they can easily strip. The ones on the back, it's critical to torque these, and we'll, in our step-by-step guide, we'll have the torque specifications for those. And for this bolts up here on the caliper as well. When you reassemble, you don't really want to use any power tools because it's easy to ruin these cross thread these bolts. That should be good. You put the wheel back on and torque that lug nuts, and also start the engine and press the brake pedal a few times before you start driving. And that's it. Thank you for watching.